This is the Wikipedia page for social emotional learning. Welcome to WikiListen, the podcast where we read Wikipedia pages and provide commentary. My name is Rob P., and I am your WikiListen current events host. Social emotional learning is in the news lately because Florida rejected 41% of the math books that had been submitted to their Department of Education, and some of those math books were rejected because, quote, the unsolicited addition of social emotional learning, close quote. So what on earth is social emotional learning? Let's find out together by reading the Wikipedia page for it. Social emotional learning. CASEL redirects here. For other uses, see CASEL disambiguation. Social emotional learning, SEL, is an educational method that aims to foster social and emotional skills within school curricula. SEL is also referred to as socio-emotional learning, social and emotional learning, or social emotional literacy. In common practice, SEL emphasizes social and emotional skills to the same degree as other subjects, such as math, science, and reading. The application of SEL and similar educational theories within public schools became increasingly controversial in the early 21st century, especially within the United States. The leading source of information on SEL is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, CASEL. I guess I'll pronounce that CASEL from now on. History. SEL began in the 1960s at the Yale School of Medicine in its Child Study Center. There, Professor James Corner started the Corner School Development Program, where he focused on the education systems of low-income African American communities, particularly the elementary schools in New Haven, Connecticut, due to their poor academic report cards. The Corner Development School implemented programs into this school that focused on the social and emotional needs of the students. Soon after, New Haven Public Schools became the charter for SEL due to their proximity to Yale University. In 2019, the concept of transformative social and emotional learning, transformative SEL, TSEL, or T-SEL, was developed. Transformative SEL aims to guide students to, quote, critically examine root causes of inequity and to develop collaborative solutions that lead to personal, community, and societal well-being, close quote. In 2020, CASEL added information about transformative SEL to its website, proclaiming it as their, quote, updated definition of SEL, close quote. Components. This section relies too much on references to primary sources. Please improve this section by adding secondary or tertiary sources. April 2022, learn how and when to remove this template message. The leading source of information on SEL is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, CASEL. The CASEL 5, which according to CASEL are the key elements of SEL, in parentheses, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making, close parentheses. These core components were created so that school systems have clear goals and a framework for implementation. CASEL also defines what it calls the best methods for implementing SEL at different levels, such as classrooms, schools, families, and caregivers and communities. CASEL defines the 5 main components of SEL as 1. Self-awareness, the skill of having knowledge of one's own emotions and developing a positive self-concept. 2. Self-management, the ability to regulate one's own emotions and monitor one's own behaviors. This also pertains to intrinsic motivation and setting personal goals. 3. Self-awareness, the ability to have awareness of the emotions and social situations of other people. 4. Relationship skills, the skill to foster relationships and communicate within them. 5. Responsible decision-making, the ability to solve problems and hold oneself accountable. These core ideologies help students to live socially and emotionally healthy lives both during and after their time in the school system. According to CASEL, SEL uses school-family community partnerships so that youths and adults alike are able to continue the practices of SEL beyond the classroom. Ultimately, SEL hopes to ensure that students have the foundation to improve their academic performance by means of less social and/or emotional stress. Stated benefits. According to Amar Al-Gaban, an independent education consultant, SEL fosters empathy and compassion and is imperative for a successful school that effectively supports the mental well-being of staff and students. Speaking on the importance of empathy, molecular biologist John Medina states that the more empathy training students as well as teachers get, the better their grades will become. He says that it is important to make the classroom feel like a safe place for students to learn. Students have shown that programs such as Spark have been a successful tool for schools with a diverse population to introduce and encourage SEL skills. The implementation of SEL is shown to be statistically associated with improving the social dynamics of schools by decreasing physical aggression and reducing bullying of students with disabilities. SEL is statistically linked with improving academic performance by 11 percentiles. Additionally, the implementation of SEL programs in schools as early as kindergarten is associated with decreasing likelihood of students growing up to use public housing, having involvement with the police, or spending time in a detention facility. Proponents of SEL say it helps students to understand and control their emotions, as well as learn to accept and understand the emotions of their classmates as they navigate through their educational careers. SEL is said to be important for teachers to understand and demonstrate in their classrooms in order to make the learning process more natural and easier to adjust to for students. Things like responsible decision-making and positive relationship building are much easier to learn for students who are constantly exposed to examples of the behavior. When SEL is woven into lessons and the school environment, students relate better to the content and are more motivated to learn and understand the curriculum more easily. Proponents say SEL can also lead to students learning important skills for the workplace as well, like teamwork, time management, and communication skills. Despite this, only 3 states, Illinois, Kansas, and Pennsylvania, have SEL standards for their K-12 curriculum. Controversies. Concerns over indoctrination. A number of conservative publications and groups, including National Review and The Federalist, have criticized social emotional learning as a, quote, Trojan horse, unquote, used to bring in ideas such as critical race theory, sexual orientation, and gender identity, and other left-wing politics to the classroom. Robert Pondiscio of the right-leaning think tank The American Enterprise Institute also criticized SEL for changing, quote, the role of the teacher from a pedagogue to something more closely resembling a therapist, social worker, or member of the clergy, no less concerned with a child's beliefs, attitudes, and values, close quote. Those opposed to SEL have cited Castle's 2020 initiative, Transformative SEL, as further evidence that SEL has left-wing political overtones. Transformative SEL lists among its goals interrogating social norms, disrupting and resisting inequities, and co-constructing equitable and just solutions. Privacy and information collection concerns. In some school districts, students are asked to enter their current mood or feelings into an app every day as part of the social emotional learning curriculum. This has caused some to worry about parents being excluded from the process, as well as about the protection of students' privacy. Policy. Support. U.S. Congressman Tim Ryan introduced H.R. 4626, Social Emotional Learning for Families Act of 2019, in parentheses SELF Act, on 18 October 2019 in the 116th Congress. The purpose of this bill was to create a grant program that supports the creation and implementation of a program in schools that helps to develop social and emotional habits. This bill was co-sponsored only by Representative Debbie Mucarsel Powell. Opposition. Oklahoma Senator Shane Jett. Man, that's a cool name, Shane Jett. Oklahoma Senator Shane Jett proposed a bill in state legislature which aims to prohibit public school and charter schools from promoting or applying SEL concepts using public or private funds. So there you have it. A little background on social emotional learning. Keep your learning off of my textbooks. This has been the Wikipedia page for social emotional learning. Thanks for listening to WikiListen. You can find us at wikilisten.com and on all social media at WikiListen, except for Twitter, which is @wiki_listen. If you have an article you'd like us to read, let us know.